So this is my second Halloween video, 2 videos in a row. Who am I? I'm going to tell you about one of my favourite Scottish scary stories. It's still ongoing today. And before you watch this video, right, I want you to keep an open mind. It's a bit of fun, well, for most people, potentially not for the people that have been harmed during this. This being the Mackenzie Poltergeist. You might have heard me talk about the Mackenzie Poltergeist on this channel before, but I've never made a full video about this guy. So this is a famous Scottish poltergeist based in Edinburgh, and I was first introduced to him from a book called The Ghost That Haunted Himself by J.A. Henderson. And J.A. Henderson is part of City of the Dead tours. He created City of the Dead tours, which is a paranormal tour guide ghost tour in Edinburgh. After reading this book, I then decided I wanted to experience the poltergeist for myself, or at least visit the haunted tomb in Greyfriars Kirkyard where the poltergeist is said to reside. So I've done a bunch of ghost tours in Edinburgh because I used to be so into that thing, but my favourite one that I've done is the Haunted Graveyard tour by City of the Dead tours. They also do another one where you can go into the vaults, but I love the one where you go into the Black Mausoleum, which is where the Mackenzie Poltergeist is said to be, and it's creepy as hell. And I like this tour because it wasn't like a funny theatrical tour, it was serious and it was scary, and kids weren't allowed on it, so that's how you know it's like the real deal. I also got the same tour guide a few times, Katie, who I loved. I think she's so good at it. In this video I'm going to let her tell the story because she's so good at it. She makes it even scarier than it is. In this mausoleum in Greyfriars Kirkyard in Edinburgh, many people have reported being attacked by an unseen, unknown entity, and this is said to be the Mackenzie Poltergeist. And many people have been attacked on the tours, and whether or not it's by the poltergeist, who knows, but creepy. I'm going to share some actual footage of the Edinburgh tour that I went on. It was from an old vlog in 2015, but I privated it because it's old. But the tour footage, I just think it's so good. I think she's amazing at telling this story. That's what I'm going to put in this video, and it creeps me out so much. You can tell I'm creeped out at some bits in the video as well. You'll see. For those that can't get to Edinburgh or go on one of these tours yourself, you'll enjoy this. But this does not compare to actually going on one of the tours yourself, and I would highly recommend it. If you can, book one, support them, they're great. This is not sponsored, I just love them. So firstly, Katie tells us the story of the Covenanters prison, and that's where the tomb is located in the graveyard. Then she goes on to talk about the poltergeist, and it is so creepy. Stay tuned to the end where I'll discuss some of the footage. And also, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, then please subscribe if you're into this sort of thing. If you like creepy videos and you enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and click the notification bell if you want notified of when I upload. So I don't know if the tour's still the same or if it's any different, but yeah, I'm going to show you the tour footage now.
Ladies and gentlemen, in a few minutes we're going to go into this locked section of the graveyard. It's called the Covenanters prison. I'm taking you inside one of the tombs, the Black Mausoleum, and that's where all this poltergeist activity happens. So far I've tried to keep these stories fairly light-hearted, but at this point of the tour I have to change the tone of the tour because the things that I've seen happen in here over the years they're just not funny at all. And this is the cut-off point because I'm going to lock the gate behind us. These gates were open until 1998. You could walk in if you wanted to. You'll see there's other people walking around the graveyard just now. You used to be allowed to come in here as well. In 1998, some very strange things started to happen in the tomb that we're going to stand in. It started off small. People walked in and got very cold on a mild night. They heard noises, they smelled smells, which you can explain. It escalated slightly. People left with marks on them. The bites, the scratches, the bruises. I've seen 3 people leave with burns on them. And eventually somebody claimed that they'd been knocked out by something they couldn't see. So the church took it seriously and the decision was made to lock these gates and nobody was allowed to go in. Until my boss decided the groups like you might like to go in. I'm being eaten alive by midges. He went up to Edinburgh City Council, he asked them for the key, they said no. He said, I'll pay you, and they said yes. So that's where we've got the key. We're the only group who's allowed into the Covenanters prison. Brilliant thing is, if something exciting is going to happen, it will probably happen on our tour, because we're the ones who are here the most. The flip side is, it could happen to one of us. And I am not excluding myself. One of our tour guides has been attacked 4 times. So I have to ask the next question for legal reasons. Do I have anybody who's pregnant on the tour tonight? Or any medical conditions you think I should know about before we step inside? And one last question. I know that the lady who's filming has been on the tour before. Have any of you been into a really haunted place before? Nobody's admitted to it? No, okay. And the reason I asked that question is, you might be slightly horrified to learn that in September, I will be celebrating 13 years of giving ghost tours in Edinburgh. There's only been one of these tours which I couldn't finish because I was too scared. You are in trouble if your tour guide has lost the ability to speak, and that's how frightened I was. I had what's called an inductor on my tour. It's very rare because I've only seen it once. An inductor is somebody whose body acts like a vessel, so without realising it, it's you that's making paranormal activity worse than it needs to be. The time it happened on my tour still gives me the creeps thinking about it. A woman made the very stupid mistake, in my opinion, of walking away by herself. Can you please stay close together? She walked away from us. There were about 30 people on the tour, and in front of all of us, she suddenly went, as if she'd been punched in the stomach. Her head flipped back. A man on the tour helped me pull her out. She had a bruise right across her stomach and a slap on her face. She described it as being mugged. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that this sounds a little bit cheesy, but I am a great believer in gut instinct. And if you get a very, very negative feeling, either in the prison itself or the tomb that we stand in, maybe you're not meant to be in here. Now, it doesn't make any sense to go into the Covenanters prison unless you understand who the Covenanters were. When it came to religion, at this point, we worshipped in different ways. Most people who lived in Scotland were Presbyterian, whereas most people who lived down south were Episcopalian. It was just a different way of worshipping. But King Charles I decided that to unify Scotland and England, we should all practice the same religion. And because Scotland was smaller and poorer, and had, a lesser population, the obvious choice for King Charles I was that everybody in Scotland was forced to change and become Episcopalian. It didn't go down well in Scotland. So in 1638, a group of people got together at Greyfriars in the Kirk House down at the bottom to sign a legal document called the National Covenant. And what that document basically said was, if you lived in Scotland, you could practice whichever religion you wanted to. The document was passed right around Scotland. Everybody had the chance to sign it. And when it came back to Edinburgh, if you had chosen to sign it, you were then referred to as a Covenanter. They formed huge groups of armies and decided to take their own king to battle. And by that point, it was King Charles II. I'm going to cut part of the story really short and tell you that the Scots lost. 18,000 Scottish lives were lost in a time which we still refer to in Scottish history books as the killing times in Scotland. 18,000 deaths. And 1,200 people were imprisoned in here. The metal bars are there to stop the body snatchers. They're to protect. It's a bit jumpy, it's just a bird. They put 1,200 people into this space, and they forced them to lie on the ground for 5 months of Scottish winter. Hardly any food, hardly any clothing. You can see there's no shelter in there. And to make it worse, they put snipers around the wall. So if you lifted your head up and looked like you could escape, you'd have been immediately killed. Some of them lifted their heads up, it got too much. Some of them were marched the Royal Mile and hanged in public. One of the most heartbreaking facts for me personally is, at the changing of the guard every night, they'd open the gates and they'd give people a chance to convert and leave. But none of them did. So, out of the 1,200 people originally imprisoned in here, only 100 of them survived to the end, and they were massacred at the end. They've got their own monument called the Martyrs' Monument. What I'd like to say to you is, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, this little pocket of Scotland is filled with the most humbling, the most harrowing memories that I hope you've ever had to endure for yourselves. One man was responsible, a man called Lord George Mackenzie, or Bloody George Mackenzie as he gets called. Ladies and gentlemen, it takes a lot to earn the nickname Bloody in Scotland. You have to be exceptionally bloodthirsty. He was the king's advocate, he supported the king. He was responsible for these tortures. Are you all coming in? Mm-hmm. You don't sound very sure. I'm not going to tell you to believe in the poltergeist, although I happen to believe in it. In my experience, it tends to manifest itself in things like hair being tugged, or shins being kicked, or backs being scratched.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, welcome to the Black Maosoleum. And this is the tomb in which we experience all the poltergeist activity. Before I start talking about this poltergeist, I've got two warnings. The first thing affects me, it doesn't affect you that much. I'm on a time limit. We've done loads of research with Edinburgh University, and we know that the violent attacks happen when groups stand in here for more than a certain amount of time. I'm not going to tell you what it is because you'll all start looking at your phones and your watches. Please just trust me. And the second thing to mention is some people feel a sort of ghostly breeze around their ankles. It's called a draft. I would be slightly more alarmed if I was standing in a cold spot, because that's something totally different. A cold spot's not environmental. It starts in the pit of your stomach. You feel it in the tips of your toes. All the hairs on the back of your neck stand up on edge. You get a strange condensation of sweat on your skin. In my experience, when somebody is in a cold spot, they often want to run past me and back into the prison. Please don't do that. 9 times out of 10. Before I started working here, I thought a poltergeist was a ghost who could move things. We've actually discovered that there are 5 different types of poltergeist activity, which I'm going to talk you through. Level 1, minor things, the smells, the cold spots and noises. Level 2 is a minor attack, so bites and scratches. Level 3 is kind of the one that I knew about. That is when things start moving. So it's not as relevant to us here in the tomb, but in a house you might get a clock that falls off a mantelpiece or a picture that falls off a wall. Level 4 is a violent attack, so that is when somebody is knocked out. And level 5, I must confess, I don't believe any of them until I've seen them, and I've never seen level 5. Level 5 is supposed to be when blood comes through the walls. One of my colleagues swears it happened on his tour. He said he was telling his stories and somebody felt something drop on their face, which they assumed was condensation, but when they got out and into our office, the lady had blood right down her cheek. At City of the Dead, we firmly believe that the entity we refer to as a poltergeist is triggered by fear. Rooms that have poltergeist activity are normally rooms in which something very violent has already happened. A rape, a murder, a suicide. You could argue that that last surge of emotion by the victim is a huge cloud of fear, and if people keep going into that room or that space and feeling frightened, they keep adding to it and they make it stronger. And I personally really believe in this fear theory. Something enormous had to trigger our poltergeist. In 1998, it was a typically Scottish winter night, sluicing with rain, a horrible evening, and a homeless man came into Greyfriars Kirkyard to try and find shelter. He walked past the Mackenzie tomb. Now you saw for yourselves when I showed you that tomb has got a roof. So he decided he was going to look inside it, and he realised that on the back wall of that tomb there's a grid just at floor level, which if you really want to, you can pull out and then crawl inside the tomb for shelter. And on the floor of that tomb there's another metal grid, and it has a staircase that goes into a crypt underneath. There's a crypt underneath your feet as well. So he went down to the crypt underneath and he found 4 6-foot long boxes. We all know what was in the boxes. The man had been drinking, he was curious, he grabbed an object and he started to bang on one of the lead-lined coffins of the Mackenzie family. Above ground, Graham the caretaker, the man who told me the story, was doing his final rounds of Greyfriars Kirkyard. He was an ex-cop, he was a tough guy, he was 62, he had a dog with him. As he walked past the Mackenzie tomb, all Graham could hear was a banging noise coming from underground. Graham had to make himself walk up to that tomb and look inside it. Down below ground, our protagonist is still banging on the coffin. not realising that the floorboards he was standing on were very weak. The floorboards crumbled and he plunged down into one of the plague pits that I described to you earlier on. He fell into a mountain of decomposed corpses, skeletons, you name it, he fell into it. And you know what? In my opinion, he quite understandably freaked out. What we would like to accept is that on that night in 1998, those two men shared a moment. Think about the story from both perspectives. They released a huge cloud of fear. The homeless man desecrated two tombs. He disturbed the Mackenzie family. He disturbed the plague victims. We think if you combine that huge trigger with what I would argue is an enormous cloud of fear left here by our Covenanters, we think that that event is what triggered our poltergeist. So perhaps controversially, we don't think the poltergeist is the spirit of Mackenzie. Otherwise, he would have shown himself before 1998. We think it's called the Mackenzie poltergeist because it started in the Mackenzie tomb. So the most obvious question to everybody should be, why do all the attacks happen in here? It belongs to a family called Rutherford. And the honest answer is that we don't really know. Gradually the attack started in here. It wasn't us. It was a lady who works at the church who started to document this. So by the time we started to come here 16 years ago, we did not invent the story. Somebody accused me of that the other night. But what we do each night is we keep telling it to people. Which leads me to my next point. You are standing inside the Black Mausoleum. I'm not. I hardly ever do. What you've got to think about while you're in it is that nearly every night of the year we are adding to this poltergeist. 3 tours a night on a normal night, 5 tours a night in the Edinburgh Festival, 13 tours on Halloween night. We bring people in and we try and make you feel a little bit nervous. I know there's been a few screams from this direction already. What I'd like to ask you, just for my own curiosity, and please don't answer out loud because we'd have an hour-long debate, just answer it for me inside your head. Did you want something to happen? Because I can almost guarantee it that if something had happened directly to you or to somebody that you really care about, you'd have hated it. And you all paid me to stand here.
And that's all the footage I've got. I can't remember what else she said, but I would recommend going on the tour. Even if you think it's a load of rubbish, it's still a lot of fun. So like I said earlier, a lot of people have reported being bitten, scratched, burned, touched, slapped, etc. in the tomb. For example, this guy, Chris Rennie, he went on the tour and then when he came back he had all these scratches on his back. And so Chris Rennie said about this, "My back was covered in livid burning red scratches. When I took pictures and sent them to my friends, they were really freaked out. It was demonic. What happened to me can't be explained any other way." He said he didn't notice anything until he got a taxi back to his hotel in Leith. He said, "I was about to go to bed when I felt burning on my back." He said, "I took my t-shirt off and looked in the mirror and that's when I saw the scratches. I was stunned. The scratches were burning. I put tea tree oil on my back to try to take the pain away. By morning the scratches had turned into welts and the skin was broken in several places and my back was bleeding. I felt drained. No one could have done it while I was on the tour because I'd have felt it. Because of the position of the scratches, there's no way I could have done it to myself. I'd been wearing a long thick coat so the scratches couldn't have been made by tree branches or by me leaning against the wall. And I hadn't fallen over drunk because I don't drink alcohol. It has to be paranormal. It's the only way it can be explained." He also went on this tour completely by himself. Yeah, weird. And I'll put a video below of like a bunch of different photos of like different marks and stuff people have found on their bodies after the tour. So what do you think? Have you ever been attacked by a ghost? Have you ever been on one of these tours? Let me know in the comments below. I don't like these noises. Not a fan. Not a fan. Okay, I'm gonna go. I hope you enjoyed these Halloween videos. Something a wee bit different. I definitely have more Scottish stories that I want to tell that are really creepy, so leave in the comments below your favourite Scottish creepy story and I'll write it in a list. I'll put it in my list. I'll put it on my list is what I'm trying to say. Don't forget to subscribe, click the notification bell if you want notified of when I upload. Thanks very much for watching and I'll see you later. Sleep well. Sorry.